It's showtime!
I'm out. See you in 6 months to a year, bitch. Hello people of the internet, Tony here, back from my 1-year mandatory hibernation in between uploads. So let's just jump straight into the video and cover a PS2 first party release that Sony never wanted you to play. Now let's cover the background of this game, and get around to explaining the video title that you may or may not have read. Ghosthunter is a 2003 third-person shooter horror action romp, released in the UK. Write that detail down in your detective journals. It was developed by Gorilla Cambridge, best known for creating the medieval franchise, the forgotten child of the early Sony cartoon mascots. The game was published by Sony Interactive European branch, making it a Sony first-party title. From what I can tell, it had mixed reception, with Eurogamer only giving it credit for its graphics despite the awesome leather jacket Gorilla Cambridge had sent them. Side tangent, how could you ever give a game a bad review when they send you this absolute gamer drip? Now, some red-blooded, virile American gamer in the crowd might be saying, I remember this game being published by Namco, and the box art you show has Namco on the logo. And you, sir, are correct. After the middling reception Ghosthunter received over in Europe, Sony's US and Japanese offices saw no point in publishing the game in their respective regions, causing Namco to swoop in and nurture the game the same way a white woman does with a pit bull. This extra time allowed the devs to polish the game a bit, as seen in this statement to IGN from a 2004 interview, the year of the American release.
I recommend checking out the US version, as it really is a more polished overall experience. Some sections you will simply not recognize. In fact, we have made over 1,500 fixes and improvements in order to create the American version. The grenade mechanic has been refined. All areas that people had comments on in the forums have been addressed.
The polished American release will be the one we're covering today. And 3, 2, 1... We play as rookie police officer Lazarus Jones, a character named after two important biblical figures. Lazarus's first day on the job as a detective in Detroit's homicide division went awry when him and his partner, Anna Steele, a character named after the phone lady your parents argued about when they thought you were asleep, are investigating a closed school where a professor killed multiple students, but the case went cold. As the gang splits up and looks for clues, Lazarus finds his way into the school's spooky dungeon sewer because this school runs on Hogwarts logic. He stumbles his way into a lab, trips into a jukebox, which releases countless tortured and relentless souls with an explosion, just like Season 2, Episode 12 of Happy Days. Lazarus wakes up assuming he's been drugged because, like most cops, he assumes fentanyl can do anything. Anything. Even necromancy. When Anna comes to his aid, she's kidnapped by a ghost knight. Lazarus finds himself allied with a mute ghost sidekick, which allows him to see ghosts and solve puzzles. These events end up with Lazarus teaming up with an AI made by the professor he's investigating for murder in hopes to save his partner from a horny ghost with a classical literature degree, and less horny ghost he freed from the jukebox. And maybe, even along the way, he'll solve the case. From here, the plot has some ups and some downs, as we go through 5 levels which take an hour plus per level. When reflecting on the game from its story perspective, I enjoyed its tone, which is very similar to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where it can have an atmosphere, but hit you with a joke in the next scene. The dialogue is quippy, but not too quippy, and Lazarus only really talks in cutscenes, and all his lines are delivered well by Rob Paulson from TMNT fame, with his voice for Lazarus and Raphael being pretty similar. The other thing about Lazarus as a character is that he comes off kinda stupid, competent but stupid. Other characters treat him like an idiot. He says dumb shit a lot, and in multiple cases the game even has a laugh track play after his dumb comments, like the game is laughing at him. It's odd to say the least. After the school segment of the game, we're transported to a swamp where Lazarus is tricked by a ghost to go fuck with some rednecks, which goes poorly for Lazarus. An interesting detail is you're unable to capture enemies, as we were later to find out they're astral projections of the rednecks and not ghosts. We then meet the second most racist looking man in the world with dreadlocks and his two sons. He tells Lazarus he's been fighting the wrong people, and that a ghost kidnapped one of his relatives. This leads into the haunted house portion of the level. Warning, if you're a naughty gamer and emulate this game because Jesus Christ, at certain points in the game, this will happen. Based on my experience, this only happens when enemies transform in cutscenes or gameplay. This only happens on the emulator, but it happens a handful of times. This is the most impressive point in the game so far, with puzzles and more interesting enemies and set pieces. After finding the girl in the haunted mansion, you escape a giant gator and fight the real boss, a gross inbred behemoth, by making him fight the gator. We capture both of them and return the child to the rednecks. We get transported from the swamp back to the school and do the second part of the school level, which is the filler arc of the game. It's fun, but adds very little to the story other than hyping up the villain, Sir William's Hawksmoor. But it's all worth it for this one cutscene where Ghoulboy here is performing Shakespeare, which I'm mad I recognized, but Lazarus didn't recognize this and responded.
Methought I heard a voice cry, "Sleep no more! Macbeth doth murder sleep." Is this a dagger I see before me?
No, it's a Glock 17. Police issue.
How humorous. After failing to beat the big bad, but also getting enough spirit energy to activate the teleporter, Lazarus teleports to the best part of the game, the ship level. We start in the underbelly of the ship, being attacked by ghost soldiers. Lazarus uses his militant police training to shoot the tank, where he proceeds to blow up more members of the greatest generation. Sorry, Peepaw. We then meet Colonel Freddy Fortescue, the best character in the game. He's amazing. He tells us that we've been shooting good ghosts and explains that the Kraken, these gross things all around the ship, are the real enemy. From here, you just sneak around and do fun astral puzzles. But in all honesty, the cutscenes and the audio logs elevate this level to my favorite part of the game because Freddy is such a goofy guy. We take on the Kraken with help from our best boy, but sadly we have to part ways with Mr. Fortescue at the pearly gates. Like most Shakespearean love stories, it was forbidden love. We get a cutscene between Ghoulboy and a new villain, who we meet in the prison level, an Alcatraz-themed moody coast with an oppressive atmosphere given by a rather nice skybox. A large number of enemies throughout this level are based on early 1900s police officers. After Lazarus displays he has no loyalty to the badge, he sneaks his way into the prison sewers. We solve more puzzles which have a very neat setup and make our way to the visitors center, where we hear the voice of Frank Aglin, Mr. Shawshank Redemption from earlier, who was manipulated by Hawksmoor to kill his wife and given the chair. Through a very well-made sequence of puzzles and cutscenes, we put Ackland's daughter's soul to rest, which leads into one of the more heavy tonal shifts of the game. After a heavy cutscene, Lazarus is saved by Professor Richmond. They have a back and forth that comes down to the professor being jaded after being framed for murder, and Lazarus goes off at him in the junkyard saying he'll bust these ghosts all on his own. After a boss fight against a giant junkyard minotaur monster, our two ghost hunters gain mutual respect for each other, and once they start getting along, they have a pretty good back and forth, and together, they raid Area 51. I'm gonna repeat that one more fucking time. Like most bros, instantly, they get the idea, let's raid Area 51. Okay. We're raiding the sci-fi military base because that's where spooky ghost nights go. So much for theming. Apparently, this is where Richmond started his paranormal research for the federal government, who wanted to create ghost super soldiers, or some shit. The game kind of loses its footing in the final act, I'm going to be honest. We capture Ghost in samey hallway after samey hallway, then we get double-crossed by the professor. Lazarus gets shot. Wait, Lazarus gets shot? Yeah, Hawksmoor is using his hypnosis power or some shit, and just makes Anna fucking shoot him. And then Lazarus goes to the only person he can trust, Robo Richmond, the computer.
Super fighting robot.
Robo bitch.
Fuck yeah, you're a ghost killing machine. A ghost killing machine with the mobility of a fucking McDonald's wind-up toy. Jesus fucking Christ. Pro gaming tip. And despite of being a badass looking war machine motherfucking robot, just walk past the ghost. You will die if you don't. After the hell of playing of Robo Richmond, he brings Lazarus back to life just like the biblical tale. Except there's no Jonesy and no reboot van. As the resurrected Lazarus, we're given one gun and do a very underwhelming boss fight. Richmond then blows up the base with a soul bomb, killing him, Astral, and Hawksmoor. And this is Lazarus's response.
Just gotta think of a good reason for being about 3 days late.
Make it a good excuse. You may need to use it again. You sure you're finished with all that stuff in there?
Yeah, this real world will do me just fine. Homicide, carjacking, narcotics.
Illegal parking, noisy neighbors, dog fouling. Hey, it's a jungle out here, partner.
You know, back there, you shot me. You killed me.
And your point is?
Took you 2 shots. I need a partner who can do the job at 1.
Yep, everyone is dead, and his response is, "Oh, how am I gonna file all this paperwork?" Men smarter than I could argue whether this is a trauma response, or Lazarus is just too stupid to understand what's gone on. Either way, the game reviewed great, Lazarus is a PlayStation icon, and we still get games in the series to this day, right? Ah shit, guess not. Fuck. Now, if my summary of the game's plot seems disjointed, this is only partially my fault, dear viewer. While playing the game, the plot just kinda goes on place to place. There's not a lot of connection tissue between each level, other than them ghosts need to be busted. Oh, same. Lazarus as a character carries the whole game with his goofy charm, but it feels like the team had a storyboard and never really fleshed out the plot. Stuff kinda just happens. The ship and prison level feel the most coherent as a single narrative in the game, but despite the story's shortcomings, I still had a pretty good time. It's a fun paranormal romp, and perhaps you'll have the same enjoyment I did.
We'll return after these messages.
I've made you a lovely cup of tea, Teddy.
From the story, let's move on to gameplay. Ghosthunter is a pretty standard PlayStation 2 mascot shooter. Think Ratchet & Clank and Jak and Daxter. From a design mentality, it's very much from the same realm as these games. While those are inspired by collectathons, this game is inspired by horror. Lazarus isn't jumping around and collecting shit, he's blasting ghosts. So blasting them ghosts is all you do as a player. Let's cover how you do it. Throughout the game, Lazarus gets 6 weapons. His Glock, his shotgun, his pulse rifle, his sniper rifle, his grenade launcher, and the spectral Lasco. And the cherry on top, the capture grenade. Each gun excels at taking out a certain type of enemy throughout your adventure, but you're never really forced to do so. It's only going to save you time. After you deal enough damage to a ghost, you'll use the capture grenade to automatically capture the ghost, or see the ghost health to deal the amount of damage needed to capture it. Pretty easy stuff, nothing crazy, but trying to capture a ghost as fast as possible is what kept me going. There was a rhythmic vibe I got from the combat, and the capture grenade sounds and animations were fun enough to put me in a zen type state to get through the game. The other portion of the gameplay is the previously mentioned astral puzzles, which is definitely the standout mechanic. As Lazarus, you'll find astral points, a spell circle where Lazarus can activate his Sharingan to summon the world's shittiest Susano. As Astral, we can move now up, down, and everywhere. We use her ghost powers and the ability to fly to solve puzzles, allowing Lazarus to move forward in the levels. These sections never overstay their welcome and add a nice break to the fun but repetitive main gameplay loop. While the gameplay is fun enough to get you through the 10-hour runtime of Ghosthunter, it simply does not have the polish or the replay value in story to come back repeatedly, causing it to fall short of other titans found on the PlayStation 2. So let's wrap this up in my final thoughts. As previously mentioned, Ghosthunter had strong competition on the PS2 coming from both fronts. As a horror game, it's coming nowhere near the heights Resident Evil and Silent Hill set for the genre on the console, while as a run-and-gun romp, it cannot compare to Ratchet & Clank and Jak 2 and 3. Once again, history has seemed to repeat itself for Guerrilla Cambridge, where they just couldn't keep up with the overall quality set by the other first-party Sony developers. It's almost odd how scatterbrained this game comes off, since now companies would rather put out a polished old turd before anything like this seeps through the cracks. We can even see the two sides of this game based off how Sony Europe and Namco decided to market Ghosthunter. In the American trailer, it shows off moody lighting, portraying it as a horror game, while in the UK trailer, Lazarus is shooting Ghost to a next up on Toonami ass beat. Let's take a moment to compare.
There are thousands of ghost stories, tales of suffering, loss, and rejection. Into a few intrude the living.
That being said, despite Ghosthunter's confused and odd design, I fell in love with this game while playing through it in my guest bedroom of the house I grew up in on my silver PS2 Slim over the past holiday season. Despite not growing up with this game, it had a very PS2 first-party nostalgic grip on my heart. I think any fan of the PS2 era should give this campy adventure a try, so I guess what I'm trying to say is Lazarus Jones has my nomination for PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale 2, baby. What a fucking shitty game title.
Survival Diary Update. I have been drinking dewdrops found on the forest leaves, and I have been eating mushrooms and moss. Mostly mushrooms. My rabies has taken a turn for the worse. I am starting to hallucinate. When I close my eyes, I can see strange characters running around chasing colorful geometric shapes in a dark and infinite limbo. I have stopped closing my eyes. I fear I am going mad. Beware!